Manga anthologies are low-key underrated. When people think about manga, most of you probably think about, I don't know, fully serialized 100 plus chapter series like Tokyo Ghoul.
Brother, sister?
Maybe if you are a bit deeper into manga, you can also think about a few one-shots like Look Back, the average Yuri manga. Today I wanted to talk about the really underrated thing that is manga anthologies. What's a manga anthology? It's a short story collection, but for manga. You read drawings instead of words, okay? If you've ever gone to an hentai, there's probably a chance you've bumped into one of them. Like this Zenless Zone 01. This one's actually so fire. I mean, if you've ever gotten obsessed with like a visual novel, or a JRPG, or an anime, you've probably gotten an obsessive search for more visual material and found a manga anthology of it, like the Mahoyo ones. Or if you like a specific author or artist and they're moderately famous or pretty famous, there's definitely a manga anthology of them, like the Before Chainsaw Man anthology, which covers his one-shots prior to Fire Punch. Anthologizing the old short stories and one-shots of an author is just a very common thing to do in general. I bet you'd also want to read Koyoharu's Gotoge's works before she made, or he made Demon Slayer. I bet you want to read the prototype Teichiro that had of One Piece before it became the peak that it's today. And I bet you want to read Naoki Urasawa's short stories, because he's just an excellent writer in general. Basically any mangaka you can think of has one. There's also like a lot of gay ones. Not that there's anything wrong with that, obviously. That's just an observation. If I'm gonna be honest here, I've never read a gay romance anthology in my life. All the anthologies I've ever read have been stuff like the Tsukihime, A Piece of Blue Glass Moon anthology, Comic Star, or Nickelodeon. Funnily enough, this one has like gay stuff in it. There's nothing similar between those two. I don't know why I mentioned them. Actually, I do, because those two are the ones I'm reading right now. Nickelodeon has nothing to do with the TV network, by the way. Don't expect some Dan Schneider harassing his underage actor side story. It's a 3-volume collection of horror, comedy, and tragedy stories made by Dowman Sayman. He made the Boynik Hotel. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that one, but I could have sworn it had an anime. I haven't read that one. I've read Nickelodeon on the other hand, and I love it. One of the greatest manga I've read in my life. It has short stories that are sort of interconnected, and it kind of feels like a slice of life show with like super crazy short stories that get really edgy sometimes. Like the one about the trans girl who thought she was the reincarnation of the Columbine school shooters. I kid you not, that's an actual story, and it was oddly heartbreaking, not gonna lie. These side stories have this very specific vibe to them that I really like, even if I'm like after a few of them, and I love the way they flow from one another. It's like listening to a really well structured album, if that makes sense.
I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this one.
There's this other anthology by Dowman Sayman I've been reading as I make this video. It's Melancholia. It's about as crazy as Nickelodeon, but it feels way more interconnected, because like on the background of all these stories there's a meteor about to crash to Earth called Melancholia.
He said it! He said it!
And by the end of the anthology it becomes more like a story about how to prevent Earth from ending and stuff. And throughout all these stories there's this undercurrent of melancholy. Like a lot of anthologies have thematic connections between them, so it's not like this one is special in that aspect. Like Tomie. You know Tomie, it's the evil girl every power scaler talks about. If you've watched Jennifer's Body, I think it's kind of similar to that too. I wouldn't know because I haven't watched Jennifer's Body or read Tomie, but I've read the wiki pages of these two, so you could say I'm sort of an expert. And speaking of story, I almost forgot to talk about horror anthologies. Sorry for that one. Horror anthologies are like kind of strangely prevalent in general in horror media. Like there's stuff like VHS, the average Halloween special in a cartoon, the Twilight Zone, the Alfred Hitchcock shows. Those are staples of horror, and anime and manga are no exception. You have Junji Ito, who's like the only horror mangaka who people talk about. He wrote Tomie, by the way, and for a good reason. He knows how to make and draw creepy and eerie stuff. He has a few anthologies, but instead of talking about Junji Ito, I wanted to talk about PTSD Radio. PTSD Radio is what I can only describe as the first analog horror type manga. Just a bunch of really short horror stories about weird, terrifying, and traumatizing stuff happening to random people. And because the stories are so short, it definitely feels like you're changing from station to station on a radio. Sorry, what was I talking about again? It has cool art, but honestly, I don't like how it's designed to jump scare you, because books are not a really good medium for getting jump scared. It also kind of reminded me of Mieruko-chan, so if you want something similar to that one, then this one is not a bad recommendation. I previously talked about how I was reading the Tsukihime Anthology comic, and that's more of what I think of when someone mentions a manga anthology, which is kind of consumer braining of me, because imagine all the short story collections and anthologies you thought of were stuff like Harry Potter fanfiction collections. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'm just playing. This one's just an anthology of short stories made by different artists and authors about the visual novel Tsukihime, a piece of blue glass moon. There's this other, quote-unquote horror anthology I read while writing this video, and that's Tomorrow the Birds by Osamu Tezuka, and this one actually gave me nightmares for some reason. It's not that it's scary or anything, but just the concept freaked me out in general. If you've ever watched Birdemic, it's kind of similar to that in a sense, that it's about evil birds colonizing humanity. Maybe I'm just ornithophobic or something. Manga anthologies are pretty underrated, which is crazy because the format of an anthology is perfect for today's low attention span, short form content based society. Sorry, that sounded pretentious. But for some reason, people like me, for example, prefer longer stories. Maybe I'm just projecting, and short stories and anthologies are more popular than I think, but I don't know. When was the last time you heard someone talk about Petit Apple Pie? Actually, let's pretend that one doesn't exist. When was the last time you heard someone talk about Mermaid Saga? That's right, never. Go read short stories, they're pretty cool and a huge part of literature everywhere. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and also give it a like and let me know what your favorite manga anthology is.